This week, we talk about Xbox's new game preservation plans, the current backlash against Ubisoft's next big game, the potential Destiny 3 leaks, and more. All of this tonight, but first, on to that new beautiful bean intro. Welcome to the place where PC and console gaming talk combine. This is the Orange Box Podcast, episode 27. I am your host, the man who is selling episode 27 for multiple pricing tiers, but the cheapest, in quotes, is $17.99 per month. Nathan, also known as the Frozen Gamer 87. And joining me, as always, the man whose out-of-podcast real-life model is actually a beautiful woman, Justin, better known as I Am Zeracon. How you doing today? How's your week been?
Not bad. It's been, I guess, relatively normal, especially getting off of a little bit of busyness and hecticness from last week. I got a replacement for something I ordered on Amazon, which was just a Batman film collection. I bought that off of Amazon, and I read the comments. People were saying that when they ordered it, it had arrived destroyed and in pieces, and I was skeptical because of that, and I really hesitated to buy it. But because it was on sale, I went ahead and bit the bullet, thinking maybe it'll be fine. But turns out it was not fine, and I did get it in pieces. The discs worked, but the cases were just completely destroyed, and it was a real shame. I wanted to try to see if I could get it replaced, but Amazon would not replace the set with the set. They wanted me to replace it with something else entirely, and I thought, no. So I just went ahead, got a full refund for that, shipped it back, but I did find it on eBay. Someone actually had a picture with it, with pictures of showing what it looked like, and I thought, it's a little more than what I was going to pay originally, but I think I'd rather take that and get that instead. So it actually arrived today, so I'm very happy about that. And it's not in pieces, so I'm happy there.
So Batman film collection, is that just like all the like 90s or 80s and 90s Batman movies?
It's this one's like mostly the animated films.
Oh, okay.
So some stuff from the 90s, like Mask of the Phantasm, right. And there's one from the New Adventures, then a lot of the newer standalones. And I think one film, which is based off of it was the Batman film based off the 66 series.
Okay.
I think the Cape Crusaders Return or something like that.
Interesting. Okay. Cool. Well, my week has been very busy. I'm not sure what it's going to look like after today, other than, the normal stuff. But, of course, let's see here. Thursday went to the office to work, and then had to edit the podcast when I got home and cook dinner and other things. No, I didn't do that. I don't remember, but anyway, then there was, I had to get songs picked out for Sunday, and then practice on Saturday, and then tried to rest as much as we could on Saturday, but basically ended up being like half the day working and half the day resting, and then the same on Sunday. But yeah, and then there's just been various other things I've had to take care of. It's just been kind of hectic, but we got like the new laptop for the church on Monday, and I set it up yesterday and got it finally ready to go. Was able to record the discipleship thing tonight, and it looks like this one finally worked properly. Like, the recording came out, without a bunch of skipped frames and everything else, so it was looking good. It does help actually having a GPU in there for recording video. Even though it really shouldn't matter that much, but I think it's just because Streamlabs is processor heavy, and if you don't have a GPU for video rendering, then it just tries to put everything on the CPU, and that just doesn't work real well unless you have a really good CPU. And even then, it's like, eh. But either way, I think it's going to work fine. The streaming part I'm not sure about yet, but I know that typically Streamlabs I have to fiddle with the settings anyway to get it just right, so it's just, we'll see how that goes. But on a different note, so the, I talked to you about the Devil May Cry, the physical copy that I got, and like I was kind of going back and forth a bit on whether or not I wanted to keep it, because even though it only has the one game and the other two don't work, it still is a physical copy of the game, and I still like having that for the collection. But I just decided, okay, I'm gonna look on eBay, see if I can find a copy where they acknowledge that it doesn't come with the second and third game and don't charge $40 for it. And thankfully, I found a copy, $20 for the physical. They, of course, acknowledge that it doesn't come with 2 and 3, but it's like, okay, that's a price I can get behind. I'm okay with spending $20 for the physical copy that only has the one game, whereas the other one I spent $40 on. So I'm gonna send that one back. But I was able to use it to record footage, so that'll be my next comparison going up next week. I'll talk to you some more about that when we get into talking about games that we've been playing, but it's definitely going to be an interesting comparison for various reasons. So anyway, that's all I got in terms of that. So what have you been playing this past week?
All right, so fewer games than the last time. First game that I played was Stardew Valley with some friends. We went back to the island that, well, you don't see this right now because we're actually in the middle of our Winterfest activities, and so we actually, as you can see, we had a fishing challenge, and it actually ended up being in a tie, which was unexpected to say the least. But when we went back to the island, we were able to expand upon where we could explore, which is something that I hadn't even done when I was playing this section by myself. So there's definitely a whole lot more to explore, and there's other side quests to do. There are, well, this is partially because of the new update. There are new creatures, or at least stronger creatures to fight. There are new weapons to get, and yeah, it's just like a whole lot more stuff that, and on top of stuff we were already trying to do and accomplish, just more stuff that for us to do and accomplish. So that's going. But I also played a game that I was gifted the other day, which was called Halls of Torment, and it is another survivors type of game where you go into an arena of some sorts and you just fight endless monsters for a set amount of time until you die or the timer ends. This one I find interesting just because the aesthetics are very reminiscent of a 90s CRPG, sort of like Diablo, and so that was very interesting to me. So far, this definitely seems to be something that I find to be on the better end of survivor games. It's maybe, for me personally, right behind Vampire Survivors, but it's definitely ahead of Death Must Die and Choo Choo Survivors. Like, it's definitely better than those two. I can easily say that. I'll definitely have to play a little bit more of the game just to see what else is there. I believe it's still in early access. I'm not certain. I only checked to see more about the game when I had received it. But so far, though, I think based on what I've seen from both in the achievements and also just some of the features that are in the game, as far as like the quests you can do, it seems like there is a pretty decent amount of content there. So I am going to look forward to playing more of that. But I also went back and played some more BioShock, and it's definitely definitely having some more fun. I got the camera that you need to get, and so now I'm venturing back. I did encounter this weird glitch where initially when I was playing through this level, I had found all of the little sisters very fast, very quickly, I might add. And I thought, wow, that was fast. I don't have to worry about coming back later or trying to find another little sister later on. But then it turns out I found another little sister, even though I had seen that I collected all of the little sisters for that stage. I thought, that's weird. Why is that a thing? And so I thought, for right now, I'm going to leave you alone. I'm going to come back later and, rescue you. But for right now, I just want to move on. And besides, also, I was low on ammo at the time, so I really did not want to get in a fight with the Big Daddy at the time. But then just out of curiosity, I looked it up online, and it turns out that actually is a glitch in the game where if you get all 3 little sisters for that level before a certain point, then a 4th one will spawn because it's necessary for a particular area.
Gotcha.
But if you defeat it, but if you do rescue that little sister at that point, though, the glitch will happen, and even if though you rescue the little sister, if you get to the end of the stage, it will not count. The game will say you did not rescue all the little sisters. So you actually do have to leave that one alone. But I think the thread I read said that if you wait until later on in the level, and you do that certain thing that's you're supposed to do and come back, then you can actually rescue the little sister without it affecting your progress at all. So I'll probably do that, maybe not, because I don't want to tempt it.
Right.
But I thought that was interesting. But yeah, I'm still enjoying the game so far.
Very cool. Yeah, definitely look forward to hearing your thoughts as you get further on, because I think it's a masterpiece. It's an incredible game. It's so well designed. I mean, it's not perfect by any stretch, but I don't know. It just in many ways it holds up really, really well, and mostly just in terms of the overall gameplay. And I don't know. It was just satisfying. Like I enjoyed it a lot in 2013, and then I played it again in 2020 and on the Switch, and eventually I'll play through it a third time. The hard part is that, like, I almost want to play through it on Switch again because I have New Game Plus and I have all my powers, early on. But at the same time, it's like, but it plays way better on the Steam Deck. So I mean, play it on the Steam Deck, or switch between Steam Deck and playing mouse and keyboard on my desktop. Though I guess I technically could just play it docked and do mouse and keyboard. But if I did it on my desktop, then I'd probably be getting 240 frames per second, which would be incredible. Completely unnecessary, but why not? As for what I've been playing, so I actually got a chance to play some Lego games with my boys. So my older son, we were able to play some Lego Harry Potter, and we played basically through a couple levels. Like, I couldn't tell you. I'm trying to remember exactly where we left off, but we're still like reasonably early. I think we just that's right. We just finished the level where you deal with the troll in the bathroom. That was the one. So that was the last level we did, and it was fun. I mean, there's some aspects of the controls that are a little janky, particularly like trying to aim spells, and if you accidentally target someone and then you like try to move the cursor away from that person, it doesn't typically like untarget them, and so you end up zapping them when you don't want to. I don't know, that aspect's a little janky, and I don't really like that, but it's still fun, and getting a chance to do something with my sons is just really neat. But yeah, so we went through that part, and then my other son wanted to play Lego Pirates of the Caribbean, so we were playing that, and I think we basically like just left whatever the name of the opening area is. I can't remember the name of it, but like right after you commandeer the ship. And I will say this one is much funnier than Lego Harry Potter has been so far. And maybe it's just because I'm so familiar with Pirates of the Caribbean that like I got all the little jokes that they did that much more. But yeah, we had a good time playing this one, and I definitely am looking forward to playing more of these games, because it's like these are the kind of games that I was kind of interested in playing anyway, but playing them with my sons is way more fun to me, because that's just that's something I didn't really have, when they were younger. They weren't really ready to play co-op games, and now that they're older, it's actually possible to do, with one of them being almost 7 and then the other one being 8, turning 9 this year. So yeah, it's a good time. I did play a little more of The Messenger. I haven't played as much of it this week, mostly just because I kind of got sidetracked on testing out some other games. That reminds me, I do just want to make a correction from something I said last week. I thought that Maneater was a Metroidvania. It's not a Metroidvania. It's like an open ocean RPG, and you have the shark like gets different mutations, which give him like different abilities and stuff. I can't remember if there's supposed to be any sort of Metroidvania elements, but at least the way it's classified on Steam is that it's an open ocean RPG. So either way, but yeah, going back to The Messenger, yeah, it's still fantastic. I think I've gotten through maybe 2 more bosses, something like that. I'm still, I'm not even in the 16-bit portion yet, so I'm still just in the 8-bit stuff, and I really like it. I want to play some more. I just haven't, because I've gotten sidetracked. One of those things that sidetracked me, which was probably the game I played the most, is of course Horizon Forbidden West. I'm still just plugging away at that, having a good time with it. I just love how well it runs on my PC, especially because I remember when I first tried playing Zero Dawn on PC back before they fixed the game. It just had so many issues, and like Forbidden West has just been running butter smooth the whole time. I really like that. And I mean, the gameplay is just good. Like it's very good gameplay. I like it quite a bit. Yeah, thankfully, at first I had kind of gotten the impression that Aloy was just going to be really like girl bossy and that sort of thing. And I mean, she is to a degree, but really not any more than she was in the first game. So it's been fine. The main thing is just I'm having a good time with the gameplay. And yeah, so of course that's sidetracked me quite a bit. I did decide to test out one of the games that I got, one of those cheap games that I got, and that is Okami HD, which I actually have to very unfortunately say, and this is going to make it really interesting when it comes to doing the comparison down the line, I think the Switch version's better. This game cannot run at 60 frames per second. It can only run at 30. It's locked at 30. There's nothing you can do about it. And furthermore, the Switch version, you can use the touchscreen for doing the brush strokes. You cannot do that on the Steam Deck. You can use the touchpad, which works okay, but you have to press 2 different buttons before you can even use the touchpad, because you have to press a button to bring up the Celestial Brush, then press another button to push the Celestial Brush against the page, and then use the touchpad or the joystick to do the actions. But I find, at least with the default controls that they have, the brush is a pain to use. Like I don't understand why it's so bad, because I feel like it wasn't that bad when I played it on the Switch. But more than anything, it's just the simple fact that the Switch version, you can do all the brush strokes on the touchscreen, which makes a huge difference playing in handheld mode. And this one, you just can't. There's no patch for it. There's just nothing to make it possible to, improve the way this game controls. And so, I mean, it only cost me like $1, maybe $2. I mean, it was really cheap. So I don't feel like I lost anything by getting it. And I mean, I might even try at some point playing with mouse and keyboard, because I've heard actually doing the brush stuff with the mouse is quite a bit better, even if I'm not a huge fan of doing stuff like that. But I don't know. Either way, I mean, Okami's still a great game, just not something I'm like in any rush to play. I am looking forward to doing that comparison though, because it's going to be a really interesting one to compare, just because of the simple fact that it runs at the same frame rate on both platforms, not due to power or anything, but just because of game design. And like, I looked into it and there's just absolutely no way to fix that problem. So stuck at 30. I mean, it's not a like super twitchy, it's not a twitchy game by any stretch, so it's really not a huge deal. It's just annoying that, you know, on more powerful hardware I can't get above 30 frames per second. There's no excuse for that, except that that's just how they designed the game. And apparently they try, I guess when they originally were porting it, they were trying to get it at 60, but it was just completely breaking the game, like it wasn't working properly, because of how the game was designed to run at 30. So anyway, but another game that distracted me a bit was more just one I kind of decided to jump back into because I've been interested. I've just been kind of like, okay, I feel like getting back into this, and that's Destiny 2. I decided to play a bit. I played a little bit streaming to my Steam Deck, which unfortunately wasn't a very good experience. Maybe it's just because I'm so used to playing that game at like 120 frames per second, and it felt a little slower at 60, but it didn't feel like it. I mean, it felt like it was lagging a little bit, which typically when I've streamed to my Steam Deck in the past, it didn't do that. So I don't know. It may have just been me, and it may have been that there was some other issue with the internet, but it wasn't really like working quite the way I wanted it to. It still just ends up having a lot of the same issues that I always have with Destiny, and that's just feeling like there's too much to do. But I mean, the gameplay is still really solid. Like it's fun, particularly the PvE stuff is really fun. It's just that I feel like there's just so much that I feel kind of overwhelmed. Like it's hard for me to decide what specifically to do because there's so many things I want to do. And so then I end up just kind of like feeling paralyzed with choice. And then if I have someone to play with, I'm more motivated to play more. And if I don't have someone to play with, then I'm just kind of like, okay, I have no idea which direction I want to go. So that ends up being the case. But I also did some PvP, and I've always been terrible at PvP. Like I'll occasionally have a match where, oh, I'm doing great. Like if it happens to be more skill-based matchmaking where I get, paired against people that are similar skill levels. And those ones are always way more satisfying because then at least I'm not just getting my butt handed to me constantly, and instead it's more like it feels like there's a lot of give and take, and I just don't feel like I'm wasting my time, but it's particularly just because I wanted to try doing something a little different, and it's something to help me progress a few different things, and one of which is specific that it has to be done in PvP, which is powering up a gun, basically, that I have to get a certain number of headshots with that gun in PvP. And it's very, very slow process. I'm like maybe 33% through the headshots I need. And most of those were not obtained, in the last time I played. Is more like just this has been slow progression that occasionally I'll jump into PvP and try to do that. But yeah, anyway. But there is one other game that I have played quite a fair amount, and that is one of the ones that I mentioned earlier, and that's Devil May Cry. So I, of course, because I still had the physical copy of Devil May Cry on Switch, and I wanted to, just test it out, I figured I might as well record this because initially I wasn't even planning to get another physical copy because of just the simple fact that it doesn't come with the other two games. But I decided to just go ahead and play. I played a little bit on Switch, mostly for initially just kind of, checking to see how it performed before I actually did the recording, kind of, refamiliarizing myself with the controls and everything like that. And this is actually kind of a shocker. It performs about the same between both platforms. I'm not sure if it looks exactly the same, but it wouldn't surprise me. I mean, like I can't specific like thinking about it at least. I'll be able to tell for sure once I actually record the other one and get a look at them side by side. But thinking about it at least, I don't think there's any visual difference between the two versions. Both games run at 60 frames per second, both the Switch and the Steam Deck versions. There seems like there might be a way to increase the frame rate, but it's overly complicated. It requires like downloading some external software and stuff, and it's more of a hassle than I think it's worth just to get the extra frame rate, because 60 is still great. I mean, 60 is still perfectly fine. I mean, the issues I have with the game aren't because of it being 60 frames or anything. The issues I have with the game are just general jank from it being an early PS2 title and having the fixed camera, you know, where it'll occasionally shift camera perspective, but it's not like, but you can't, you know, rotate the camera or anything. So you're just kind of stuck with whatever camera angle they happen to give you, and occasionally it can get you in trouble. But either way, yeah. So I ended up playing. I did some, you know, for the recording, which I haven't recorded yet for Steam Deck, but mostly I was just playing in general on Steam Deck. Part of it is I actually somehow my save data disappeared, so I don't know what happened there. I wasn't very far into the game. I had only done like I think the first 5 or 6 missions, and none of them are super long. So I had to start over, but for one, because of the fact that I had played before, it wasn't something where like it was impossible for me. Like it felt like a huge chore for me to start over, and did give me the opportunity to refamiliarize myself with controls. And then also gave me a chance to do the secret missions that are in the different levels that I've done so far. Because this game, unlike the later Devil May Cry games, even when you complete a level, you can't go back to it. There's no like mission select to replay a level to get whatever you missed. So if you miss it, then you can't get it until you do until you replay, unless you happen to still have a save from before you did that mission. So I ended up replaying several missions, or rather I'd gone through like the first 3-4 missions and then realized that I had missed some stuff that I needed, as well as an opportunity to grind out some of the game's currency. Because like there's just one particular like boss that you fight that if you have the right strategy, you can beat him pretty easily, and he'll give you 500 of this particular resource at a time each time you kill him. And then you can save your game, and then if you reset, then when you load your game back in, it'll take you to the beginning of that level, and then you can fight him again and just keep saving after each time, and then you gain a bunch of the currency, and then you can buy upgrades. So I did that quite a bit until I had enough to buy all of the upgrades you can get, at least at the beginning of the game. I think later in the game, as you get additional weapons, that you have the ability to get further upgrades. And then of course there's some that you get just from pickups in the environment, completing challenges, that sort of thing. So, but at least it's as far as all the ones that I can purchase right now, I purchased all of them. So that put me ahead from that standpoint, and just gave me a chance to get more comfortable with the controls and everything. So let's see here. I think the last mission I completed was like mission 7. No, mission 8. On mission 8 or 9. I can't remember. It might have been 9. Anyway, point is that for anyone who's listening, if there actually is anyone listening, I got to the point where I completely defeated the Phantom, like the 4th time fighting him. So that's basically about where I left off, and yeah, it's been a fun time. Like I like the game. I don't know if I'm going to be like super focused on it. It's a short enough game to where I might just keep like plowing through it, but I'm not entirely sure because I also want to play like Horizon and stuff, but a lot of it is just going to kind of depend on what I have time to do. With Destiny, at least, I'm probably going to be playing at least once a week. I'm going to try to do, mostly just because like there's the new season that just started that brings back some of the old weapons, like reprised versions of old weapons that are like really good weapons that I really like, and so I kind of want to do it for that. And then also because of the expansion that's coming out in June, which we'll talk a little bit more about some of that later, but I will say that whereas before when I purchased the expansion, I was just kind of like, okay, I expect that it's going to be more of the same, and I'm looking forward to checking it out for the most part, even though I wasn't like super excited about it. After seeing the like reveal of all the things that they're adding in, I'm pretty excited about it now, so I'm looking forward to it. But anyway, that's all I got on that front.
Okay. I don't think you told this to me before in our chat, so I was just curious if you could mention now. You said you went back and bought some additional games from Instant Gaming.
Yes.
What games did you get?
Let me bring up my Steam Deck. Give me 1 second here. Because there's like another dozen games. Because it's just, the sale. Okay, so it's... And Devil May Cry was actually Mission 8 where I left off. Let me just... Real quick. Okay. Exit this. And... games I bought, there was Yooka-Laylee and the Impossible Lair, Indiana Jones and the Emperor's Tomb, Wildfire, Psychonauts, Shantae and the Pirate's Curse, which I've already played on 3DS, Shantae and the Seven Sirens, which I haven't played, Sable, Lego Indiana Jones 1 and 2, Nobody Saves the World, which I have on Switch, so that'll be when I do a comparison. Tales of Vesperia, especially because I've heard that the Tales games are like disappearing, being delisted a bunch. And I haven't played through any of them. But I do have Tales of the Abyss on 3DS. Let's see here. I think that was it. I didn't count how many of those I just said, so... But I think that's all of them. I mean, altogether, it ended up between the two sets of games that I bought, it was about 30 games, so...
It's not bad.
Yeah. 30 games for about the price of one new current-gen console game. Yeah. Definitely, one of the benefits of PC gaming, you never have to worry about games expiring or not being playable. I mean, occasionally you'll come across one where it just doesn't really work, but it's very rare. Usually there's a way to get it working, and a lot of them they just work no problems. You don't have to worry about having the old hardware. You just boot it up, and a lot of times you can brute force it to where it's like, this looks and plays way better than it ever did before, or at least plays better. So yeah.
But nice.
Anything else before we get into news?
No sir.
All right. So, let's start talking about this whole Xbox thing with the preservation team. I'll just bring up the actual quote here. Can I actually sign in and look at it now? I did create an account on Twitter for the podcast, so okay, now it's not cooperating. Let's try this again. Click on that specific one. Okay, so from Xbox President Sarah Bond, We formed a new team dedicated to game preservation, important to all of us at Xbox and the industry itself. We are building on our strong history of delivering backwards compatibility to our players, and we remain committed to bringing forward the amazing library of Xbox games for future generations of players to enjoy. Let me just bring up the actual article here from Windows Central. Just double check if there's nothing else specific here. There's things about what they're planning with the new hardware, which we're not really going to cover at this point. Yeah, so that's essentially a good summary of what it is they're doing. Something I do want to point out before I ask for your thoughts here is that this is not the first time they've done stuff with backwards compatibility, and they've actually had previous teams in the past that focused a lot on backwards compatibility, and then they shut down those teams, typically because they just got to a point where there wasn't any more that they felt like they could do, whether it was because of a technology issue or because of licensing, more often than not. Of course, now, especially with them now owning Activision Blizzard, that opens up a massive number of potential games that they could be bringing over to Game Pass, and of course, just making backwards compatible in general with Xbox. Whereas before, because of licensing issues and so on and so forth, they didn't have those options. So, anyway, your thoughts on this?
I think that this is definitely a good thing. Gamers being able to play the games they bought years later, or if someone, say, bought a game from a previous generation and wants to play it on their current hardware, being able to do that is definitely a plus and a win. There's definitely no downside to doing that at all. One sort of question that I sort of had, because we don't necessarily know what's going to happen, partially just because we don't know how it's going to be implemented, is would they want to do something that, say, kind of bypasses the need for licenses, because you're not trying to get a specific game to work. But I wonder if they could try to, say, maybe have their own emulator built into a newer hardware, say like some sort of Xbox whatever emulator, and have that built in, so that way they won't have to worry about necessarily, say, we've been trying to get this game to be backwards compatible. But if you have sort of like an overarching program that can run those games, would that be something that would be better for them? Because they wouldn't necessarily, granted, for some games you would have to do some testing to make sure they work, but if you have something that would be easier for gamers to, say, pop a disc in, or to, well, in the case of digital out, that would probably be more something what's backwards compatible, since you can't necessarily just like pop in a game that's digitally into a newer console and play it that way. But if it's something disc-based, I wonder if they could have some things set up there where that way, if you had an original Xbox disc, put that in, you have your Xbox emulator right there on your whatever Xbox console they have a generation from now, and then just be able to play it right off the bat. I wonder if that's something they could be considering, because they haven't necessarily specified what their plan is in the article. If they're doing something like what they're currently doing with Xbox with backwards compatibility, where they just try to make sure the game actually runs, and they're just like going through select games, that's fine, that works. But I guess the problem with that is, as you mentioned, with licensing, because you're going to really have to be choosy about which games you actually are able to select and use, as opposed to, like I said, having something that is an umbrella program that just pretty much just covers everything, and you don't necessarily have to worry about licenses, because you're not trying to actually get those games to run, but you're just trying to make sure that the games work in general.
Mm-hmm. Well, they sort of have something like that already. The way that it works now, from my understanding, is that people can just insert their Xbox disc, and then basically it just unlocks a license for them to have it digitally. So then they can use any of those games that have been added to the backwards compatibility. And of course, it's not making it. I mean, those games that have the licensing issues and all of that, those ones are not currently available, but still a large portion of their library that is. So, of course, the great thing about the way they have it set up as well is that a lot of times with those Xbox games, you get them significantly upgraded, like 4K, 120 frames per second on an original Xbox game, because it just upscales and everything else. Because essentially they are using an emulator. I think that technically what it is, they're using an emulator, and that the only reason why some games won't work properly with that is just because basically they haven't checked a box or written a line of code that says, okay, this one is okay for someone to use, and they don't have it available in their service. But I agree with you that it would be a good thing if they made it so that they just had a blanket way anyone can put in a disc and play that game immediately, regardless of any sort of licensing issues. But considering the way they have it set up right now, I understand why they don't do that. Either way, that all being said, I definitely really I like the idea of them focusing more on game preservation, because that's something that is important, and I think Xbox has easily been the best in terms of game preservation of the different platforms, simply because of the fact that they have backwards compatibility even with original Xbox games and 360 and Xbox One, whereas none of the other, Nintendo and Sony don't have that. For Nintendo, it's obvious reasons because of the fact that they've changed formats, between their different platforms. And with PlayStation, they don't make it possible at all to play any disc earlier than PS1. Now, I believe that if you own digital copies of PS1 games, that you can play those on your PS5. But when it comes to of course you can't just pop your disc in and play it off the disc. PS3, of course, is not backwards compatible at all. I think PS2 they have some games, but not very many. They do have some PSP games, I'm pretty sure. They don't have any Vita. Of course, I think PS4, it's almost all of the library is available to play, and some of those are upgraded a bit in playing them that way. But yeah, Xbox easily has the best in terms of backwards compatibility for the consoles, and of course, none of them are anywhere near as good as PC, because PC you can play basically anything. So you're not limited on. You can play anything from any generation. You can go back 40, technically 50 years. I'm not sure what. I'm trying to think of what the oldest game would be that you'd be able to play, but you probably could play anything, just about. There are probably only maybe a handful of titles here and there that are just not playable. And of course, then there's some PS3 emulation that it's not very good, where it basically isn't playable. But that's just more an issue of how PS3 stuff was designed versus it being specifically a PC issue. So, because obviously Sony hasn't cracked how to do PS3 emulation on their consoles either. They couldn't do it with PS4, and they haven't been able to do it with PS5. I hope they do. I hope they figure that out, because that would be great for PlayStation fans. It would definitely push things forward a lot. But yeah, either way, this is great. I hope that they really just find a way to make this more of a permanent thing, because it's basically they spin it up, they run it for a while, and then they close it down because they kind of hit a brick wall, and they're just at a point where they can't do any more. So I hope that this is something that's going to be continuous as time goes on. Any other thoughts on that?
No, sir.
You want to talk about this Roku patent? Because I think there's definitely some interesting stuff here.
Yeah. Okay. So, Roku has put out a patent because the company wants to explore the idea of displaying ads when they're essentially when the screen is paused, and this is something that can be done, say whether you pause the show or if you pause the game. Now, here's specifically what's talking about. So they want to talk about displaying ads via HDMI. So basically, if you have some sort of device and you plug into your TV, which is going to possibly be Roku based if you have a smart TV, essentially the patent wants to, as the article says here, aims to solve that by keeping tabs on the video signal that's being delivered over those HDMI ports. And it's clear that Roku would have to keep very close attention to those video signals. Randomly interrupting a video game a consumer is playing on their Xbox will almost generally guarantee that no gamer will buy a Roku TV ever again. But basically, it wants to they want to check the frames, and basically if what's being displayed, the videos being displayed on the TV is just a still image, or the frames are persistent, essentially the TV detects that the video must be paused or the show must be paused, something like that, and during that time period, Roku wants to display ads. That's something they want to do. And I've got quite a bit to say, but I actually want to hear your thoughts before I actually put out my 50 cents.
Well, let's see here. Now, to some degree, I mean, they already do this like with the Roku and that sort of thing to some extent. I have one of those in our guest room just because that was something my mom had and left behind. But it's one of those things where in some ways I could see it being like, okay, it's not necessarily super intrusive, but I could definitely see situations where, let's just say there was a glitch and it decided to start displaying ads when you're in the middle of a boss fight in Dark Souls, or you just happen to be like paused for a second, or you have to, step away, or let's say that this ad pops up and then it's difficult to close, like some pop-up ads that'll show up on different websites if you don't have a decent ad blocker. Stuff that just becomes really intrusive, really annoying. I don't like it. I don't like it at all. The other thing that concerns me about this is that even if it wasn't super intrusive, even if it was easy enough to close out and it was only happening when you're literally like everything is paused, you're not doing anything with it, you're stepped away and then you can close it immediately when you get back. My concern is, what are they going to let be advertised? Because that's something that like I could see being a real problem depending on what kind of stuff they're advertising. Because it may just be, very generic, obvious stuff that like, okay, whatever, I don't care about this ad, like it doesn't bother me. But what if they just, start opening themselves up to advertising anyone who will pay the money for advertisements? Like, let's say they decided, we're gonna, advertise condoms on while someone's watching a kids program, or extends, or some other like male enhancement nonsense. Because I remember especially when I was in my teens and we had satellite TV and stuff, because we couldn't get cable where I lived, and like late night you'd get like these ridiculous ads, like the ones for like calling a girl or whatever, not necessarily like adult kind of stuff, just more like someone to talk to, talk to pretty girls and so on and so forth. And I remember there was the one ad that had the Evangeline Lilly who was in Lost, and this was before she got on Lost, that I remember seeing this ad and I recognized her from that. Of course now she's fairly big, done a bunch of other stuff, but anyway, or just like all these other ridiculous ads, or like infomercials or something, like where people are completely incompetent and unable to do, very basic everyday things that normal human beings can do. Anyway, all that being said, I don't like it. It makes me like hesitant about getting a smart TV. Technically, two of my 3 TVs are dumb TVs because the one that I have in my room here got in 2009. I think it was already probably a couple years old by that point. And, it's just a 720p basic HD TV. Nothing fancy. When I bought a TV for our guest room, I very specifically made sure, even though 4K TVs are very cheap and everything else, I very specifically made sure to just buy a 1080p TV. I wanted it to be a non-smart TV, particularly because we had the Roku, and so it's like, I figured, might as well just keep using the Roku, no point in getting a smart TV. And then our living room TV is a smart TV. But I can just see smart TVs being something where you're going to end up with situations that you end up getting ads because of this idea. And I'm sure Roku isn't the only one that's going to do it. I'm sure Roku is going to be the one that starts with it, but then other smart TV manufacturers are going to be bringing up these ads when you have the same kind of thing, because it's more money for them. So anyway, that's basically all I have to say. So go ahead.
Okay, yeah, and I one thing actually I forgot to mention was the fact that the patent does seem to mention something about viewing the content that is being displayed, and somehow by viewing the metadata, it will try to display ads that are relevant to whatever you're watching or playing.
At least that's good.
At least that's good. But here's partially where it's going to go into what I want to discuss. So the first thing is, I absolutely view this as intrusive. The whole purpose of having an HDMI device and plug in there is so that you don't have to deal with any sort of ads. Like if you bought a movie on Blu-ray or DVD or whatever, you plug it into there. You plug your Blu-ray device into your TV. You bought that, you put it there. I mean, granted, you have the previews and whatnot, but when you're watching the movie, the whole reason you watch that is so you don't have to worry about dealing with advertisements. So the fact that if you pause your movie, step away, and there are ads there, that's inexcusable right there. Like, you bought that for there. And the fact that if you're playing a game, you did not buy a game to want to have ads forced upon you. And also going back to the metadata, it shows that it's watching whatever you're watching. That's not supposed to be the way it works. You bought the TV for your purposes. You're not supposed to have being spied upon while you're playing a game or watching a show or a movie or whatever. So I find a complete problem with that, and that's another reason as to why I am completely against smart TVs. Like, my first TV was similar to you. It was a 720p TV, and in more recent years, or at least last year I should say, I wanted to get a newer TV, a larger TV, and I would just get a basic 1080p. That was fine with me. I had a hard enough time trying to find one that was a dumb TV. And eventually I was able to find one, but I was very adamant about just looking for a TV, buying a TV that did not have any sort of smart technology implemented, because I didn't want anything that shouldn't be there, because I don't want to have to. I'm not streaming and don't care to worry about streaming services, so I don't need whatever Roku has. If I want to watch YouTube, then I'll just either have it watch it on my computer, or when I have this set up, just like use whatever computer is going to be connected to my TV and then just pull it there. Like, I want to have computers completely separate from the screen that I'm using.
Right.
So I am completely against this. I think that this is completely invasive. I think this is completely unnecessary in that fact. And like I said, you bought the products so you wouldn't have to worry about ads. And now Roku wants to put ads in the content that shouldn't have ads in there anyway. So I am completely against this, and I am very I am against that. I mean, I've heard even a couple people say that, granted, I don't know of any TVs that actually do have this, but I don't know if someone I saw mentioned that using DisplayPort to bypass that, since it's different.
I don't know if any
TVs have that.
I've never seen a TV with DisplayPort. Granted, I haven't really looked for that, but I don't think that exists.
Yeah,
I guess we have monitors for, so.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I mean, eventually, if I want to get something new to replace like a TV, just like get a large monitor and then just use that instead.
Yeah, that's something I hadn't really thought about. Yeah, the fact that they would be basically just keeping track of what you're watching. The only way I could see myself going for a smart TV, because I think realistically, I don't know how easy it's going to be to get a TV that's not a smart TV nowadays. I mean, like, it took a little bit for me to find one that was 1080p and not a smart TV. But you could just not connect it to the internet. I mean, because most of them, yeah, I mean, like, some of them will use Wi-Fi, but of course you have to put the Wi-Fi information in there. And others, you have to connect it hardwired. And either way, if you don't connect it, then you don't have to deal with that part. But, yeah, I don't know. I'll definitely keep that in mind, though, if I ever upgrade. Because basically, my thought right now is that I'm not getting a new TV until one of mine breaks. Because I don't have a reason. Like, I don't want to do 4K. I mean, I would like, not necessarily that I'm against 4K in general, but I don't want to do 4K because then the movies and stuff that I have that are all in 1080p are not going to look as good on that screen. And I don't want to go the direction of getting 4K movies and having to upgrade my collection again. As it is, like, I already took a bunch of movies that I had on DVD and upgraded to Blu-rays. I mean, over a course of many years, and I still have a handful of movies that are still just DVDs, but yeah, I'm not cool with that. Yeah. Either way, we'll see what happens with this. Something someone suggested, which I think is probably what's going to happen, is that it could get to a point where ads on TVs are the default, and you have to pay extra to get a TV without ads.
Oh man, that would be something there. I could definitely see that happening, and something that I also had heard about by someone who had been discussed this was the fact that even if you say, did something where you don't connect the TV to the internet, what if eventually they get to the point where you actually have to connect the TV to the internet to get it to work?
Yeah, that's true.
Because they already try to force you to commit to terms of service. What if they eventually, in order to actually use the TV that you bought and paid for, you first have to connect to the internet to get it to work, even if you don't want to?
Yeah. Well, I guess in a situation like that, you have to... I mean, I'm sure that if it gets to that point, there has to be a way to jailbreak it. And then just completely bypass all of that. So, that will definitely be the way I would go if it came to that, but who knows? I mean, some of these TVs just last a really long time if you just don't bother upgrading. Most people upgrade because they want the new shiny thing. I mean, I just don't have a reason to. Like, now, granted, if I didn't inherit the TV in the living room that's the 720p smart TV, I probably would have gotten a 4K TV, or at least gotten a 1080p TV. And whether or not I would have gone up for a smart TV, I don't know. Because I mean, I've been fine with just using, like, in my bedroom, I use my PS3 for streaming stuff. Because we'll stream from like Amazon and occasionally YouTube, mostly just Amazon. If we stream anything, most of the time we just use it as a Blu-ray player. I mean, Blu-ray and DVD player. That's primarily what we use it for, since I don't really play games on there very much. And then if I do want to play something on my PS3, usually I'll switch the PS3, put that on my desk, and then put the PS4 over by the TV, and then we'll use the PS4 for the same purpose. But haven't done that in a while, so yeah. Anyway, any other thoughts on that before we move on to the next topic?
No, sir.
All right, so it is technically the end of an era. The 3DS and Wii U, I mean, of course, the eShops shut down last year, and now their online services are... I can't remember if they're officially gone or if they're just... Are they gone now, or is it...
I think they were gone.
They're gone now. Yeah, they're gone now. There is the Pretendo Online, which is a separate thing that you can use if you have your 3DS and or Wii U modded, so it lets you be able to continue to play those games online. I never really did the online play, so for me it's like, meh. I mean, the eShop was the only thing I cared about, and I bought everything I wanted from there. So, but well, I guess first I'll just ask, did you ever do any real online play with either of those systems?
I did some. Primarily, it was a whole lot of Smash Brothers. I remember just like playing. Well, initially playing a bunch of Smash 3DS, but then eventually once I got my Wii U, then I was playing mostly on playing Smash Wii U for definitely a good time, and I feel like there was another game that I definitely played online quite a bit, and the fact that I can't even remember what it was is kind of sad, because I know it's a game that I had been playing quite a bit online, but definitely Smash, both on the 3DS and the Wii U, those were the biggest games that I was just playing online, and it was good. I mean, every once in a while there was some lag and whatnot, but it still was, for the most part, enjoyable for me.
Yeah, I think the only online I ever really did was, I mean, like, I tried Smash Brothers a little bit, but I'm not good, so I gave up on that pretty quickly. The only thing I really played, like, a significant amount online was Splatoon, the first one. But even that I was never very good at it. It was more like I played it quite a bit when it first came out. But because I just so quickly got far behind, and then I'd keep getting match made against people who were way higher levels than me and just way more skilled, it just stopped being fun. It's like, I never understood why Nintendo couldn't make an offline multiplayer mode or even one with just bots. It's like, I would have loved to play Turf War constantly against bots. That would have been fun, because then it's like, because that's a really fun mode. But the problem is, it's not fun if everybody around you is so much better of a player than you are and completely kicking your butt. It's like, I'd rather just have, like, I don't mind them being better, but it's like when they're so much better and it just feels like you're just getting completely trashed every single time. It's not fun. But yeah, what I will say though, Pretendo Online aside, this does make me think a lot about, the legacy of the 3DS and the Wii U, because, both of us were our former Nintendo fanboys. And so, we had our things. I defended the Wii U until Kingdom Come. And, I was hardcore on that system. And, I still think in many ways, I really still think it's a great system. I'm glad I bought one. I'm glad I played the games that I did. The off-TV play was a complete game changer. I played Arkham City. I finished that while I was in the car. And I remember sitting there waiting for the credits to finish rolling, which are ridiculously long on that game. It takes forever to get through the credits. But I remember beating the game on the gamepad screen. I had a power inverter that I plugged my Wii U into, and then I just played off the gamepad. It's fantastic. Or like, what else was there? There were a variety of games that I played a lot on the gamepad while we had a TV show going on or whatever, like Watch Dogs. I remember I specifically waited for the Wii U version to play that one. I'd be really curious about how it runs now. Because it's like, I know it's not like great by any stretch, but at the time it was like mind blowing. And I'd be really curious to see how it compares with the Steam Deck. And I might do a comparison at some point. It's not going to be like an OLED battle, of course, because the Wii U is like a 480p screen. But it would be kind of just interesting to see how they compare. Because it's like, I'm positive that the Steam Deck could run Watch Dogs, probably max settings, at least 60 frames per second. I mean, that game was what? I think that was 2014 probably that came out, I want to say. It was either 2014 or 2015. I can't remember. It was probably 2014 because Watch Dogs 2 came out in 2016. I remember that. And of course I got that one on PC, but loved that one. Way better than the first one. Have no opinion on the third one because I have it, but I haven't played it. I think I got it for like $8 when I finally got it. But yeah, and then the 3DS on its own. I mean, it's as a purely handheld system, the 3DS is my favorite of all the handhelds, without a doubt, because there's just so many high quality games on there. I love the 3D effect. I mean, there's still a bunch of games. I mean, even if you discount all the ones I bought, you know, during the fire sales before the eShop closed down. I mean, there's just a bunch of games I haven't even played yet on there that I've been wanting to play. And I love that system, especially once you do like the software. I mean, first of all, the software mod, that's a huge thing. It makes a big difference. But even without that, it's great. And then if you do various hardware mods, which really is just like getting a decent grip, biggest thing. The other thing that I did very early on, which I'm so glad I did, is I don't even know if you can still get them, but Japan, you can get these circle pad covers that made it so that you actually have a grip on the circle pad, because the circle pad's like slippery and it's like my thumb would slip on that thing constantly. But I have one that just makes it so that it's kind of like feels like a GameCube joystick, where it's, you know, like circles on top and it's just so much easier to grip. And I loved it so much that when I played Smash Wii U, I would use the 3DS as my controller. I was one of those rare people because I mean that with the cover on the circle pad was much better. Plus I had played a bunch on the 3DS. And so I ended up using that. And I also didn't have GameCube controllers to plug in, or at least I didn't have the adapter to plug in GameCube controllers. So I just never bothered with that. But and I know this is, most people disagree with me on this, and understandable. I liked Smash 3DS better than Smash Wii U. But it's partially because, number one, it came out first. So that was the one that I got really into. Because if it had come out on Wii U at the same time, then I probably would have played them a lot more equally. But the other thing is that I hate what they did to Link's appearance in Smash Wii U. It is terrible. He just looks like, his face is like whiter and he looks like extra feminine. And it just bugged me because it's like he looks great on the 3DS. He looks like the way he's supposed to, exactly, you know, like Twilight Princess Link and everything. I mean, the controls are obviously the same between the two, other than, you know, obviously the 3DS having its flaws. But like, now I wouldn't say that I like Smash 3DS over Smash Ultimate, because Ultimate is obviously far and away the best. I mean, obviously Melee has its all own benefits, but Ultimate has every single character plus a bunch more. But yeah, I love the 3DS version of Smash, and I love the 3DS in general. And even though I'm not a Nintendo fanboy anymore, I am a 3DS fanboy. I'll admit that. Not that I think it's better than the Steam Deck, but you know, for purely handheld systems that don't connect to the TV, anything else, 3DS is my favorite, without question. Vita's a close second, though.
Yeah. Okay. I'm sorry. It's gonna partially. Well, I don't know.
You can disagree with me. That's fine.
Okay. I'm just going to disagree solely on the fact that I feel like even though I enjoyed a lot of the games on the 3DS and had a great time with them, I partially feel like I enjoyed the Game Boy Advance, specifically the SP, more. Yeah. Granted, it's been years since I've held one, so I don't know if I held one today, how I would feel about it.
Right.
but just think about how I felt then. I enjoyed how it felt well enough. I enjoyed being able to play Game Boy Advance, Game Boy Color, and original Game Boy games on there. And I mean, granted, possibly it's just I don't want to say it's because of my bias with Metroid, but that might partially be
that's fair. But
that
I mean,
might partially be why.
Yeah.
But,
well, the one thing that I will say though is that the 3DS has more Metroid games than the Game Boy Advance. Technically, well, maybe because the 3DS has Metroid, Metroid 2, has Super Metroid, has I mean, it doesn't have Zero Mission, which is of course unfortunate, but those who are ambassadors have Metroid Fusion, which I do. And then it has Samus Returns. It has, if you could really consider it a Metroid game, Federation Force. You can play Hunters on there. And in fact, if you mod your 3DS, you can play Hunters with better controls, way better controls, and widescreen. So...
And also
now, oh yes, Metroid Prime Pinball as well. Yes. The one thing I will say though is the Game Boy Advance. The only reason why it isn't more of a favorite for me is because I got mine really late and I only got a few games for it. Not because it wasn't a great system, because it absolutely was. And what I played on there, which was basically like I played Kingdom Hearts Chain of Memories, and I played Final Fantasy IV, both of which were great. And there was WarioWare Twisted, that was great, especially because it had one of the mini games it had on there that was like not just one of the micro games that you play normally, but it was like an actual regular mini game. It was one called Mutroid, where you were a cat and because you rotated the system to do things with it because it used the gyroscope in the cartridge. You basically were a cat rolling on its back, shooting at bugs in the air, which was hilarious. And I mean, like, there are a ton of great games in Game Boy Advance. Don't get me wrong. It's just that I don't have the same nostalgia for it because I got mine really late. I only got to play a few games that way. I did more through emulation probably, but even then it was like very, very little. And so the 3DS, I have a ton of games for it. I mean, I don't know exactly how many games I have for it, because but I do have all of them backed up on my 3DS. I have all of my 3DS games on there. Once I figure out how to do it properly, I'm going to put my DS games on there, which I don't have a ton, but I have some, including the aforementioned Metroid games. I have a bunch of Game Boy and Game Boy Color games. I have some NES games, at least 10, the 10 that I got as an ambassador. I have some Super Nintendo games. I have, what else is there? Some Genesis games, some 3D classics. It's just like there's an immense library, and I'm pretty sure I got everything I wanted on there. But it's like 3DS was like top tier. Game Boy Advance is still great, just not my favorite comparatively.
Something I did think about, which I'm pretty certain this was online, and if I'm wrong, please correct me. I did do a little bit of this for the 3DS online for Fire Emblem. Fire Emblem, oh gosh. What's Fates. Yeah, I'm
Fates,
sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, Fates. Yeah. So I did do some on there because it had that feature where... Oh, no, I'm sorry. I'm wrong. That was not online. That was part of the Street Pass. That's what I'm thinking of. Yeah, never mind. Because I was say, because I always remembered facing other players and going to their bases and fighting them there, but I forgot that was just because of Street Pass. That wasn't actually online. So never mind there.
Yeah.
That was actually another thing I did actually like about the Street Pass, was because of the fact that you could engage with other players just by passing through them. If you had the same games, you got to actually interact with them inside of those games, and that was a really fun feature that I kind of wish that the Switch had, because that was something that, sort of had that sort of community sort of thing, because if you all, are playing the games, you can enjoy the games together in a different way. So, and of course, depending on the games that you had, it differed. Obviously, like Kingdom Hearts, I think Dream Drop Distance had something for that. Smash Brothers had something. It wasn't great necessarily, but it was something unique. And then other games had that feature. And then, of course, they also had the Mii Plaza, or no, Mii Plaza was no, that was 3DS. But yeah, it was. I definitely think that the 3DS was a good handheld, especially once you got to the new 3DS. That made it so much better. And you know, I'm very glad that I was able to find the Samus edition. That made me happy.
Yeah,
but,
definitely. One thing I will say, I think 3DS probably has the most Zelda games as well. So let's see here. So they have Zelda 1 and 2. They have Link to the Past. They have Link's Awakening, Oracle of Ages, Oracle of Seasons, Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask. Technically, they have both Spirit Tracks and Phantom Hourglass. I guess
Four Swords Adventures.
Four Swords, yeah. There's Triforce Heroes. There's the sequel to Link Between Worlds. I'm trying to remember if there's any other ones. That might be it. But either way, I think it probably has the most Zelda games, with the exception of like the Switch. Which I think the Switch basically has. It has all but Wind Waker and Twilight Princess, I believe. I could be wrong on that, but I think it has all of them. Oh yeah, Minish Cap is also on 3DS. Well, at least it is for ambassadors. I have it. So, yeah, there might be something else too. But anyway, point is that 3DS was a top tier and still is a top tier handheld, and I love it. I don't care about the fact that it is a low resolution screen, but the 3D effect makes up for that low resolution a lot, especially in a game like Xenoblade Chronicles. And if you mod the C stick so that it's not that terrible nub, and that it's actually like a better stick, it's so much better. I mean, it like makes a huge difference, because I know I hated that thing when I was playing Xenoblade Chronicles. Like, I hated it with a passion, but it was the one way that I could play Xenoblade Chronicles on a handheld at the time. So, and it was what got me a chance to actually play that game, because I remember them talking about it in Nintendo Power, and I wanted to play it, but by the time I actually got to the point of being interested in going for it, it was ridiculously expensive. And then, of course, they announced that it was coming to the new 3DS. I was like, okay, I'm getting the new 3DS. I wasn't going to get one otherwise. But it's like, okay, that's a good excuse. And then, of course, you know, obviously I could play all my previous games and has better 3D and everything else, and slightly better coloring for like Monster Hunter, for Ultimate, and you know, boots a little faster, various improvements. But yeah, anyway, all right.
Just one quick question: does the nub affect how 3DS closes? Like, does it close fine? Like, okay.
No, it doesn't make any difference. It's because basically the nub that I replaced it with is basically one of the, like, if you ever used a Lenovo laptop that has the little red nub in the center of the keyboard, which is terrible. I would never use it for actual mouse movement. That's basically what it is. It is that same nub. So it's just like it doesn't really take up any more space. It just has an actual grip to it. Whereas, you know, the original C stick, it's awful, absolutely terrible. So, yeah. But anyway, all right, we talked a lot about 3DS and Wii U. I just felt like going over that as two former Nintendo fanboys, and I would say I am a 3DS fanboy. I can't deny that. Even if I wouldn't say it's better than other things, like in terms of performance and everything else, obviously it's not, but I love it so very much, and I will stand by that regardless of anything else. Yeah. Anyway. Okay, so let's move on into the next topic here. So let's talk a little bit about this rumored Destiny 3. So there was a leaker back in, and I just realized I didn't actually add this in. Oh, here we go. Okay, so there was a leaker back in late February, who had correctly talked about something that was going to be in the Final Shape DLC for Destiny 2, which is the next expansion that's coming out, potentially the last like full expansion from the sounds of it. And he had talked about this new subclass that was coming for characters that would basically make it so that you'd be able to combine abilities from different subclasses into one. And furthermore, he even mentioned, the name of it being Prismatic, which is exactly what was revealed in yesterday's stream. So he had talked about this, and something else that he said in this post is that there's going to be Destiny 3. Destiny 3 is currently in the works. Destiny 3 is going to have, is going to basically be very much reworking the core gameplay of Destiny, in that instead of having having 3 different classes with different subclasses for each one, with different elements, or in the case of Prismatic, the combination of different elements. It's just basically going to be, there's no more classes. No more character classes. Now you just pick whatever abilities you want. So, but it would still be multiplayer. We don't really know much of any details beyond that, but those are some of the basic things that he had to say. Now, I know that you are not well versed in Destiny. You haven't played it, whereas I've got literally thousands of hours in the game, or between Destiny 1 and Destiny 2. So I definitely will have some thoughts here, but I guess one thing I do want to just kind of ask, in terms of just talking about the Final Shape, specifically because that was the preview that I was able to share with you. Now, of course, you looking at this as someone who has no familiarity with Destiny. What were your thoughts on all that?
So my thoughts was that the gameplay seemed very interesting, and I thought this was the part where you can sort of start using different sub class abilities in there, because of stuff that I'd seen, especially with, like, I think lightning, and then also it seems like, I can't remember if I'd seen something like time had stopped temporarily for some point or something like that. And the gameplay definitely seems interesting. It definitely seems intriguing enough because, well, for one thing, I am not necessarily the biggest of looter shooter type of games,
right?
But if it's I guess partially in the case of Destiny, and I guess this also applies to sort of other games that I've played, I'm also not the biggest of party-based games, or games where everyone sort of has a role which they sort of need to fill. And I don't know if this actually applies to Destiny, because I don't know how restricting, or I guess how restricted the classes are, as far as, or how an overall group works, where it's something like, say, Team Fortress 2 or Overwatch, where
it's nothing
you have
like that.
to like play these roles in order to get the game done, or if it's like, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, in general, it doesn't matter. Depending on like when you're doing the bigger group activities like raids in particular, there will be, especially when you're going into teams that are like really organized, know like what specifically they have to do, then yeah, they'll typically assign certain roles to different people depending on their skill set, that sort of thing. But in terms of you are not limited on what you can do. It's more just a matter of like who you're playing with and everything, whether or not you might have to fill a particular role. So, like, one of the common things when it comes to raids, there's one weapon that you have that is very helpful because basically it does damage to the boss, but not as much as other weapons. The primary purpose of it, though, you're shooting a constant beam at the enemy that basically makes it so they have one giant crit spot that people can shoot out. So they just, like, there's like this big huge crit bubble instead of just having to aim at their head or whatever, and people can just shoot that crit bubble and it will do critical damage versus having to, you know, hit the head. So that's like an example. Or like the warlock class has a well of energy that they can put down on the ground that constantly restores energy and that sort of thing. And so, like, in certain situations, you might have to play the role where you're just putting down the well so that people can get healed quickly, so they can, you know, recover and then do damage to the boss without taking nearly as much, because the well offsets a lot of that. So I don't know how much that makes sense to me. For people who play Destiny a lot, they'll be like, yeah, this is obvious. But for someone who's never played Destiny, it's a whole different story.
Yeah, and I mean, and I'm glad you actually made that clarification, because, I mean, while I am not, like I said, the biggest of looter shooters, I haven't really played too many of them. Looking at the gameplay that was shown today, if you're able to, especially considering the fact that, as was mentioned, Destiny 3 is removing character classes altogether, that's something that would sort of encourage me to maybe give it a shot and try it out, because, I mean, the gameplay definitely seemed fast-paced. It definitely seemed interesting. I'm assuming that I'm assuming that the games aren't heavily, I guess I should say, narrative-based, where if you didn't play Destiny 1 or didn't play Destiny 2, you won't necessarily understand what's going on, like, right now.
Well, there is a lot of narrative. However, it's not like... It's something that you could very easily catch up on, and you're not missing a ton by not knowing the narrative. Because, to be honest, like, there are certain points where I kind of tune it out, and because you'll do lots of replaying of missions and strikes and raids and things like that, a lot of times I don't even pay attention, you know, after the first time. Like, the first time I'm going through the story, you know, then I will pay attention to the story because it is interesting and they've built up the lore over the past 10 years. But then if I'm doing replays or whatever like that, I don't pay any attention. And even then, the story's not like... I don't know how to explain it exactly. It's very lore deep, but it's not something where, like, if you completely ignore the story, you won't enjoy the game. The story is kind of more just icing on the cake, because it was really, really basic in the first year, apart from, like, lore cards that you couldn't even access in the game. Back in Destiny 1, you had to, like, go to an external source connected to, like, their website to view all the stuff about the lore, and now you can access all of that in game. And then over the years they've gotten more, like, deep with the lore and all of that, and done a better job incorporating the story into the game. But even then, it's one of those things, like, if you completely ignore it, yeah, you might not fully understand what's going on, but it's not going to impact your ability to play the game, because the game is just, it's fun in general. That being said, I will also say that it's the kind of game, at least Destiny 2, I would not recommend for anyone to jump into fresh. Unless they're just looking for a game unless they just want, like, I want one game to play and nothing else. And then I'd be like, okay, well, Destiny 2 might be your game. Even if you're not necessarily into the looter shooter, it's the shooting that's the fun part. And it's just like the shooting and the abilities, you know, it's like, it gets crazy. And they've made us so, like, insanely powerful over the years. And of course, with this new subclass that they're doing, the possibilities are just mind-boggling what it is that they could do with this. And it's definitely, like, the same thing that seems to happen with Bungie anytime that they're backed into a corner, anytime that they have like a previous year that's like really bad, they always put out a banger after that. Like year 1 of Destiny 2, most people would agree it was not good. They made a lot of changes from Destiny 1 that were not positive changes. And then year 2 of Destiny 2, when they did Forsaken like completely changed the game. It made it so that it was not only better than the first year of Destiny 2, but it was in many ways the best Destiny had ever been up to that point. And then like that whole year was really good, and then the next year was kind of like so. And then the following year they made some improvements that were good but not like huge, other than adding a new subclass, adding a basically an ice subclass, ice and slowing, and then they did the following year, they did the next big one that was, I mean, after 2 years that were kind of like less well received, they had a huge expansion, the Witch Queen, which was incredibly well received and is still considered peak in terms of what Destiny has had to offer so far, the best so far. And then they had Lightfall, which was not the greatest. I mean, it was still good gameplay wise, but the story was bad and there was just a lot of issues with it, and the player base dropped off a lot and everything else. And so now they're in the spot where they've lost a lot of player base and things have just not been going well for them, and they're putting this out, and everything I've heard across the board has been positive. Now, I'm sure that there are still haters, especially those who either quit Destiny years ago because they just got tired of the grind, or any number of other reasons. But this definitely is something that, for me, as someone who doesn't play very much anymore, I mean, like, I'll play once every few months basically now, I'm excited about this. Like, I'm legitimately very interested in this. The one thing I will say about it is that all the things that they're doing, of course, I believe are very positive, very good things that they're adding into the game, especially with this crazy new subclass. But going into the idea of a Destiny 3, this is one situation where I actually hope that they will do what they did with Destiny 1 to Destiny 2 and make it so that the stuff that you did in Destiny 2 doesn't carry over to Destiny 3. I mean, of course, if they're doing away with the whole idea of character classes as well, then that might make it so that basically they really have to. But also, I kind of want them to, because I just want them to be done with Destiny 2. So that way I can just start catching up and not feel like I'm never going to catch up because there's always new content coming out. Of course, someone suggested, and I don't like this idea, but it's not impossible, that it might be that they just decide that they're going to keep producing content for Destiny 2 while also bringing out Destiny 3. And I could see them doing that because it could potentially be a way to continuously bring in revenue. But I'm not sure if I want to play Destiny 3. Like, I'm very much of the opinion that after Destiny 2, I'm gonna be done. Like, I want to do the stuff in Destiny 2. I want to play the content, but I don't want to jump into a new one again because I don't have enough time to play Destiny 2 as it is, and there's still so much content I haven't finished. I mean, that I haven't been able to do it all, so I don't know. But yeah, I guess just the last thing I would say about Destiny 3 is that the idea sounds interesting, but I don't think I'm going to let them draw me in again after Destiny 2 is done. I think Destiny 2 is just going to be it for me, and that I need to let it be it because I don't want to keep feeling like I need to go back to the game when I got plenty of time with it, and as much as there's still stuff I want to do, I don't want to start over on another game like that. But it's like I don't want to start over, but I also don't want to carry everything over so that I'm more tempted to keep playing. If that makes sense, I don't know.
So I have a question. I know you said that you in general would not recommend someone jumping into Destiny 2. But if someone were to say, because I've seen this before, I can't remember if it was Fanatical or Green Man Gaming, but they had Destiny and all the expansions for $15. Would you recommend they buy it or no?
I would say you will not lose anything by buying it. Just be aware that if you go down that rabbit hole, you are not likely to ever catch up. And also you have to keep in mind that a lot of the old expansions, the content is not in the game anymore. Basically, when you buy those expansions, I mean, they're super cheap anyway, so it's not a huge deal. You're basically just unlocking access to certain exotic weapons, which are like the highest tier weapons, weapons and armor, and subclasses for your characters. So that's not to say it isn't worth it from that standpoint. I think that realistically, if you could get Destiny 2, if you could grab Destiny 2 Lightfall and, and it comes with all the previous expansions, with Witch Queen and Beyond Light, Shadowkeep, Forsaken. If you can get all that for $15, price-wise, it's totally worth it. But it's just more a matter of recognizing that Destiny 2 has an insane amount of content, even with the stuff they pulled out of the game. And you will not, unless you really just spend like a ton of time on it and don't play anything else, or, only play a little bit here and there, whatever, you are not likely to ever complete the content. There's just such an insane amount. And it is a fun game. It has great gameplay, like all Bungie games, the gunplay is just unmatched. The gunplay in these games is just the best of any games, any shooters that you'll ever play, regardless of whether you spend a bunch of time doing all the crazy stuff with loot. It's incredible. But even with all that being said, I just have such a hard time because I know how much it can suck you in, and not necessarily that I'm not necessarily saying that I wouldn't recommend it because of the addictive nature, but more just because there's just so much content, and it feels like an impossible task to have someone try to jump in at this point. I mean, it's kind of been like that for a long time. Like, I got a friend into Destiny 2. One of the guys I interviewed for Dads and Gaming, actually, he was the last one I did, Soder. It was talking to him about that. That's what got him into the game, and I think he probably has more hours in it than I do now. At least in Destiny 2, he hasn't played Destiny 1, but yeah. So I don't know. It's just one of those things where it's so hard to say. Now, since you're a single guy, I think that it would be easier, but for like someone who's married, or someone who just has is already really busy, doesn't have much time for games, or doesn't want to put a lot of time into a single game, it would be really hard for me to recommend Destiny, other than you can get it really cheap and do that. But what I would say, I guess this is kind of just going to be I'm trying to summarize what I would say about this. I think if you can get it really cheap and you're willing to take the chance on it, I'd say go for it. If you can't get it cheap, it does go on sale every so often. But then I would just say you can, what am I trying to say? You can do the free to play version, where there's at least some stuff. It's really just free to try, but you can play a fair amount of content without having to have the expansions. And I think actually the current season, I believe, is free for everyone, so you could do all the current seasonal activities and get weapons associated with it without having to pay anything. for it. But the one thing that I will say that is a very positive thing about Destiny 2 in its current state is that you are not required to play all the old content in order to play the current content. You can just jump straight into the newest stuff. And when you start up the game, it basically makes it so that you can get armor and weapons that will automatically bump you up to the current base level. So you don't have to worry about grinding out anything in order to be able to play new content. So there is that. That is a very positive thing. But yeah. I would say, though, that if you did decide to do something like that, and let's just say that you even decided, okay, I think I'm going to check out Final Shape. Final Shape, I think right now the cheapest place to get it is probably Instant Gaming. I think that's the best price I've seen. I've actually kind of contemplated... Well, if I had the option, I contemplated the idea of canceling my pre-order with Green Man Gaming and then just buying it through Instant Gaming. But Green Man Gaming, I actually got the key right when I bought it, so I've already redeemed the key. I can't go back, and it doesn't really matter. I paid for it last year, so I have Final Shape with all the seasonal content attached to it, already completely paid for, and whether or not I play all of it, I'm sure I'll ultimately get my money's worth, especially if they actually, as long as they keep the content in the game. So, anyway. I babbled a lot about Destiny. I had a lot more to say this time just because I'm excited about what they're doing with it and all that. So yeah. Any other thoughts on that before we move on to our last topic for the night?
No, I'm good.
Okay, so Star Wars Outlaws. So this game... Alright, so... To kind of summarize some things that we discovered about this. First of all, this game's coming out, I believe it's at August 30th. The base price is, of course, $70. Not surprising. Ubisoft, it's got, typical Ubisoft formula. This takes place story-wise in between Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. You play as a female scoundrel who's basically supposed to be, like a girl version of Han Solo, except less attractive. So, alright, $70 for the base game. If you buy the next version up, it's $100. Actually, no, I'm wrong on that. It's not $100. It's $110 for the next version up. So you can spend $70 for the base version, which just includes, the game, and then has some cosmetics. You buy the next version up for $110. You get the base game with the season pass and 3 days early access. And then, if you buy the Ultimate Edition, which is $130, you get the base game with the season pass, some additional cosmetics, early access, and I can't remember if there was anything else with that. Or you can spend $18 a month for Ubisoft Plus, and you can play it with all of the stuff that you get in the Ultimate Edition. Yeah, there's definitely some controversy about this. Understandably so, because these prices are outlandish, to say the least. Before I get into all my thoughts on that, I do just want to mention one other side piece of controversy, just to include this in. They, as has been the norm for the typical current Sweet Baby / DEI practices, they took the face model, who is actually a very beautiful woman, and they made her much less attractive. They actually made her basically ugly. I mean, I guess maybe not ugly is the right word, but compared to the person she's based on, she's ugly. And considering the fact that there are examples of not only, well, I mean, if you look at a lot of the male translations, like Cal Kestis, for example, who's the main character for Jedi Fallen Order and Jedi Outcast, and it's based off of I can't remember his first name. I think it's maybe Kyle Monahan, something like that. But anyway, if you look at that face model, it's like 1-to-1 exactly. And then, as usual, they took the female who was actually a very beautiful woman and made her ugly. So anyway, I'm just gonna let you go ahead and give your thoughts on this whole thing.
Yeah, so I don't know what Ubisoft is on right now to think they can charge this much money for different versions. I mean, I don't know. I mean, maybe it's a sign that I'm getting up there in age, but back in my day, if I'm spending more than $60 on a game, I'm getting some good content with it. Like, I'm even talking about getting maybe a little figurine with the game, especially if you're paying more than $100 in the game. I mean, I remember not even paying $80 for Monster Hunter 4 on 3DS, and I got a CD, I got a screen, or a little Monster Hunter map that came with it. I got Gore Magala figure, and Gore Magala became my favorite monster in the series. But I'm spending $110, and I'm getting early access for 3 days before. And also, here's another thing: why do we need to have early access for this game when it's just for 3 days? I might even add, like, people can't wait 3 days to play a game that's coming out. And also, I mean, I don't know if this is supposed to be aiming toward people like, say, streamers or YouTubers or something like that, people who say, hey guys, here's my let's play of the game, or I'm streaming the game live and stuff, and so you all can watch me play before it comes out. Which, again, I don't know why we need an early access for that type of game, especially since it's a single player game. It's not like it's a multiplayer game, and granted, I guess for a multiplayer game that also would be kind of detrimental, because it would give sort of an unfair advantage to people who played it earlier, especially if it's like whole lot of PvP stuff like that. But I don't know why we need early access for this type of game. And I mean, I think Alex said that for the season pass, like, there's content there that should have been there in the first place, which I think definitely shows how much of a scam it is. But still, just having to spend that much money, I mean, I think paying $7 alone is egregious enough. And granted, I think that for pretty much any game that's coming out these days, like, there's no reason that these games should be $7, or at least that I would be paying $7 for these games, because a good number of games I probably wouldn't even pay $50 for them, just because I look at the game, and I'm granted, this is the same Ubisoft who said I'm sorry, not Sea of Thieves. What's their game called again? Skull and Bones. Yeah, they said that was a quadruple A game, and it had, as far as the quality and the presentation, Assassin's Creed 4 did it so much better than Skull and Bones, and that's a $70 game as opposed to Assassin's Creed 4. So I could be wrong, but I have a feeling that this could be another scenario with Star Wars Outlaws with the pricing. But going to the point about DEI and Sweet Baby, it definitely is a shame, because even not necessarily with just the model for this game, but even going back to other games that I've seen, like the one model for the actress for the character in the upcoming Fable game. She looks a whole lot better
Oh yeah.
than her in-game model. And I even
Yep.
actually didn't even realize this until probably about a year ago or so. But the model for Abby from Last of Us Part 2 looks a whole lot better than the actual in-game model, which I thought, wow, that's a shock there. And so it really makes you wonder, what is it with these game companies changing the way the characters look and making this, I mean, the female characters, make them look worse. I mean, even with going to Spider-Man, I mean, they took at least with the first game, they took the original model for Peter and changed him. And funny enough, they made him look younger, but they took Mary Jane and changed her and made her look older in the second one. Which, I mean, granted, with Peter, they wanted to actually make him look like his look closer to, I think, the voice actor. I think that was mentioned. But in the case of Mary Jane, how do you go from Spider-Man 1 looking okay, you know, and then going to Spider-Man 2, and yeah, I don't know what's going on with these Western game designers. Granted, it's not necessarily all of them, but it's definitely the ones which are getting backed by Sweet Baby. It's mind-boggling. I don't know why this is happening. I mean, again, you don't necessarily see this thing going on in, you know, Stellar Blade. Like, that model actually looks like the character in the game, and they didn't have any problems with doing some sort of translation over there. So why couldn't they do it here with Star Wars Outlaws? Just go, hey, we have the real life actress model. Let's just, you know, do a nice good 1-to-1 copy over to the game. But no, they just said, all right, we have this, and we're going to just touch it up a little bit. And yeah, that's better. That's better. Cut out all the pretty features there. There we go. That's better. Ship it, sell it. Slap a $7 price tag on it.
Yeah. You know, it's actually interesting, you know, looking at the face model for Abby, because I didn't know about that. I mean, that one's not as dramatic of a difference. Like, even though it's interesting that she's actually been like an employee of Naughty Dog for a long time, I just thought that was interesting. Apart from like the physical like thing, she did some cosplay as Abby, and it's very clear that she's wearing like muscle padding to make herself look muscular like Abby, which is kind of funny to me. Almost as if it's, you know, not something that's all that common with, you know, with women being muscular like that. Not that it doesn't happen, but still. Anyway, we're not going down that rabbit hole. Yeah, this trend of making women look worse that's just been happening over the past several years is crazy. I mean, obviously it's because they, you know, don't want women who aren't as attractive to, you know, be threatened or whatever. You know, they want, I don't know. I think it's stupid. It's incredibly stupid, and it's not. I mean, like, in general, the look of these women in these games is not. It's not like they're like ugly, but when you compare them to their original face models, they are. And the fact that they do it with the women and not with the men is just, it's bizarre to me. I don't understand it. And I mean, obviously it's, you know, it's all this stupidity with all the stuff that they're just putting in games in general, but I don't know how to express what I feel. One thing I will say, I don't like necessarily how they're masculinizing women. I really don't like that at all. I think that's like, I mean, like I understand not wanting them to be sexualized, and that's one thing, but there's a whole difference between not sexualizing how a character looks and making them look masculine. that's a whole different story. I don't like that. Now, personally, as a Christian who doesn't want to be looking at that kind of stuff all the time because of, you know, sin and everything else, I certainly don't want to be looking at the stuff that's hypersexualized, but that's just a personal choice. And but I don't want them to make a woman look masculine to desexualize her. I think that, you know, they could just put her in looser fitting clothing, or, you know, maybe stuff that's not showing off cleavage, or, you know, what have you all the time. I mean, obviously, like, even Stellar Blade is ridiculous, and like I'm not gonna play that game because of that. I'm just like, that's not gonna be edifying to me in my struggles. You know, it's like, I don't need to be looking at that. That's not gonna be beneficial to me. But I can't understand why they feel the need to make these women so terrible looking. Like you look at Mary Jane in Spider-Man and Spider-Man Remastered. Very accurate representation of the original face model. Personality-wise, I can't stand her. I think she's insufferable. But in terms of, like, her appearance, you know, she's pretty. She's not sexualized, but she is pretty. She still looks feminine. And then they completely just did the opposite with her in the second game. It's like, well, you know, she's already insufferable. Why don't we just make her even worse? And the worst part, I think the thing I hate probably most about it all is that Laura Bailey, the actress who plays, coincidentally, both Mary Jane and Abby in The Last of Us, I love her. I think she's fantastic. I think she's a fantastic voice actress. She has done like a bunch of great stuff. Like my favorite roles of hers are probably Rise in Persona 4 Golden, and then also Fetch in Infamous Second Son and First Light, where it's like she's fantastic. You know, she's a great actress. She's really good at what she does. She's gorgeous. I mean, I'm gonna be honest, she is. She's a beautiful woman. And, you know, of course, Second Son, they based the character model off of her. You know, looks like her except with pink hair and a nose ring. But, you know, like she's lovely, and you know, her husband's also an Infamous Second Son. Although I think they weren't. I can't remember if they were married at the time of that game, but he just plays like the brother of the main character, who's played by what's his face, Troy Baker. She and Troy Baker have been in like a bunch of games together. They were both in Persona 4 Golden. They were in like Shadow of Mordor. I mean, they've like worked together for decades in various games. But they're both fantastic. Both fantastic. Anyway, going off of all that, like, this is just, it's been a common thing. I mean, like, the only place you don't really see it in is Japanese games, where they don't try to make the women look ugly. They actually make them look pretty, because, like, people in general, they want the people in the games to look better than they do, which is an understandable concept. I mean, it's like the creator, I think, of Stellar Blade recently said, or one of the gals who worked on the model for Eve said that, you know, I want her to look better than I do, because it's a video game. It's like, if I'm going to be playing as this character, I want to have, you know, this fantasy of being able to, you know, be this beautiful woman and so on and so forth. Not that I think that actually I think that the person who was talking about that, if I remember correctly from like photos, she was actually a fairly pretty woman, you know, not as crazy sexualized as Eve is. But, you know, anyway, I'm going off on a tangent. Enough about that. I do want to mention one other thing that I forgot to mention about the controversy, and that's that you have to, with the game on the case, the physical case, there's a banner on top that says you have to be connected to the internet when installing the game. And it brings up the question of, is there actually any game on the disc, or is it just a little install, like a 70 megabyte installation thing like they did with one of the Call of Duties?
It's like, yeah.
And then, for people who don't have internet or don't have a good internet connection, they're not going to be able to play it. So, yeah, that's stupid. And I know that this game is still probably going to do well, just based on Ubisoft, but I know I'm not buying it. I wasn't that interested in it to begin with because it seems kind of generic, but now that I've had more of these other things come up, I'm even more like, okay, no, I'm not buying it. Even when it goes dirt cheap, because it will. I mean, Ubisoft games always go dirt cheap eventually. I'm not gonna buy it. Even if they give it away for free, I don't think I'll grab it. Well, actually, by then they might actually have mods that fix her face, so maybe then I'd consider it. But the one other thing I want to mention regarding this whole pricing structure and everything else is that while I definitely agree in general that, yeah, they're obviously cutting out content so that they can put it in the expansions, or not expansions, but the DLC, I will also say that their games are so bloated as it is that I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I mean, Assassin's Creed Odyssey. I started that game in 2019, and I haven't finished it yet. And I've played it off and on over the past 5 years. So, and that was like, okay, I did finally eventually get through the base game content, and the last time I was playing, I was just working through the DLC, but it's a crazy amount of content. As for how good it is, it's possible Outlaws will end up being better in terms of gameplay. I kind of got tired of Odyssey, and I only really hop back into it occasionally because I just kind of want to finish up the game and feel like I've actually finished it, even though I'm not going to 100%, because I'm just not. It's just too much. And I will also say regarding the early access, I'm not entirely opposed to it. I don't necessarily like the idea of it in general, having to spend a bunch of extra money just for the early access. But I will also say that, I bought Ghost Runner 2 early access. I bought Starfield early access. Those were both single player games. And I did play them day one, and but I wasn't spending significantly more. I think it was an extra. Well, I bought, I think it was maybe an extra 20, and that came with early access and the season pass, or all the any DLC that would be coming out. So I'm sure someone would certainly view me as part of the problem, but this is for an indie game, and it's a game that I loved the first game. I knew I was gonna love the second game, and I did. So for me, it was worth it. I don't think they've come out with any story DLC yet, but they will eventually, like they did with the first game. So, anyway.
But since you brought it up, I definitely, another thing with the Always Online, I think, is the fact that should be completely unnecessary, considering the fact that it's a single player game. Right. There's absolutely no reason to be online to play the game at all.
Well, I don't know if it was that the game's online all the time, or that you just simply have to be connected in order to install the game. Which
installs one thing, but I almost feel like it's leaning toward you always have to be online. I could be wrong, but
right. I mean that's how it read to
me.
Right, and that may be the case. We'll get clarification, I'm sure, on that as we get closer to the release date. But it's definitely, I mean, if you had to be online to play the single player game, then yeah, that would be incredibly stupid. I think it's incredibly stupid that you have to be online to install the game, especially if you're buying a physical copy. It's if you're getting a digital copy, yeah, it makes sense. You have to be online to download the game. But if you're buying a physical copy, you shouldn't have to download the game. You should just be able to play it. Now, it's one thing if it says you're going to need an internet connection to get a day one patch. Okay, whatever. Assuming that day one patch is in 150 gigabytes. But yeah, Anyway.
Yeah, it'll definitely. I mean, granted, I've already been of the mindset that Ubisoft just has nothing for me anymore, and
Right.
I have no intention of buying any games from them. But this, even if I wasn't, this game is definitely one where I would be just thinking, yeah, just skip.
Yep. All right. Any final thoughts before we close out for the night?
No, sir.
All right. Recommendations and dissuasions.
My recommendation is if you are playing a game on your Steam Deck that for some reason you are playing it in docked mode and using a controller, if does not work, what you should do is check your controller settings and make sure that the Steam Deck is plugged into port 1. That's something that happened to me last week, and for a couple different games, I was wondering why my controller or why the controls for my Steam Deck weren't working. It was driving me insane, and I went into controller configuration and was just looking around, and then I saw that, I guess because I had been playing the games with the actual controller, it switched the controls on the Steam Deck to port 2, and they didn't switch back when I was playing in handheld mode. So after I went in and changed it to port 1, then it worked. So that's my recommendation. If you have a game that you were playing in docked mode with a controller and it doesn't work anymore in handheld mode, just go ahead, check the port connections and see if that's the problem.
Yeah, I had that happen to me, and I just restarted it, and then it was fine, but that's good to know. My recommendation is actually going to be that if you are interested in checking out Devil May Cry 1 on the Switch, which I think is actually worth it. It's actually, I mean, the HD remaster is only like partially remastered because the cutscenes are all still, well, I should say not the cutscenes, but all of the pre-rendered stuff, the stuff that's not in engine, is all like blurry SD footage and it's garbage. But for the rest of it, it's like, okay, pretty decent remaster in terms of being in HD and all that. But if you're interested in getting it on the Switch and you want a physical version to kind of go and play along with what I talked about last week, try to find a version where someone sells it with just the game for $20, because, or, you know, for less than $40. Don't spend $40 on that as it is. But since I think just about every seller that I came across has noted that it doesn't come with 2 and 3, but 2 and 3 don't work anymore because the codes are expired. Just try to see if you can find a physical where they're charging less, because I did find someone who was selling it for 20, and that was a much better deal, much more worth it in my opinion. And it runs at 60 frames per second, seems to be about the same as it is on Steam Deck. So that'll be a cool comparison to do when that comes out next week for me. Yeah, that's what I got for that. So, dissuasion.
My dissuasion is do not buy the Batman 80th Anniversary Collection from Amazon. It's too much of a gamble to know if you actually are going to be getting something that is in good condition or something that is completely destroyed by the time you receive it. So, I mean, I took that gamble. I thought, maybe it won't be me, but it did turn out to be me. And even if there is a good discount, because I saw the discount and I thought, that's a very good deal. Just don't take that risk, and then have to go through the hassle of shipping it and getting it sent back. Just go ahead and buy from somewhere else if you can find someone, who, say on eBay, who has pictures of the collection and it looks good. Then go ahead and buy it that way, but do not buy it on Amazon.
All right. Well, my dissuasion is actually going to be that if you want to play Okami HD, and you have a Nintendo Switch and a Steam Deck, don't buy it on Steam Deck. Buy it on Switch, because Switch, honestly, I think it's just better. it's one situation where I would legitimately say the Switch version is better, because you can use the touchscreen for all the celestial brush stuff. Both games are 30 frames per second, so you're not losing anything by going with the Switch version over the Steam Deck version. Visually, I think they're probably identical. I mean, when I do a comparison, I'll know for sure, but I think honestly just the controls are better on Switch than they are on Steam Deck, and that is the one time when I can genuinely say that. So don't buy Okami to play on Steam Deck if you have a Switch. Play it there instead. You can even get it physical. It's an import from Japan, but it's still play in English, so worth it. All right. Where can people find you?
They can find me on my channel, I am Xeracon. That's IAMXERACON. So youtube.com/@IamXeracon. On Monday, I put out a video just discussing about an upcoming, another PC gaming handheld, the Orange Pi Neo. And the only thing that really stood out to me that made it interesting was the fact that this is similar to the Steam Deck, is a Linux-based handheld. So I thought that was interesting, and I was very curious about what this means, or rather how it was going to be implemented. But yeah.
All right. Well, you can find me in a few different places. So first of all, we have both on YouTube. Actually, no, I guess it's just one. Well, on YouTube, you can find me at TheFrozenGamer87. That's youtube.com/@TheFrozenGamer87. The most recent video I put out was a comparison between the Steam Deck OLED and Switch OLED playing Nier Automata, which is an interesting comparison. Of course, the Steam Deck, you get locked 60 frames or near locked 60 frames per second. Max settings and everything except for, I think it's anti-aliasing is the one that's not maxed out. But if you max out the anti-aliasing, the frame rate just tanks, so don't. But it's great on there. And then on the Switch, it's 30 frames per second. Obviously lower resolution visuals, but still a really good port. So that was an interesting comparison. The next one I'm putting out, as I mentioned previously, is going to be Devil May Cry 1. So that one, I'm definitely curious to see what it's going to look like side by side, comparing them. I'm going to be trying to see if I can start getting the comparisons to line up more in terms of the timing, like having the cutscenes playing at the same time so you get a better comparison. The tricky part is, of course, because the loading times are going to be different. So I think that basically what I'm probably going to have to do in those situations is just have just like it pause the frame until the other system catches up, and then they can play them at the same time. And that way it's more or less possible. I'm not entirely sure how well that's going to work, because it's just a little more tricky when you have when you're doing the handheld, when you're viewing the handheld screen. So we'll see if I can pull that off. I think I should have enough time to actually try to do that this weekend, and if I can make that work and it's not too difficult, then I'll probably do that going forward. But either way, should be an interesting comparison, just because both games run at 60 frames per second, and from what I recall, at least, I believe that they both basically look the same. So it's an interesting comparison. I have a bunch of other stuff planned. I don't know for sure which one I'm doing. I have a few that I listed on my channel is probably the next few that I'm going to do, but there's so many different games I could compare that it's crazy. There's a lot. Otherwise, also, we now have a Twitter account, as well as a Facebook account. On Twitter, we are at the Orange Box Pod, because I couldn't fit Orange Box Podcast on there. So you can find us on there. And then on Facebook, I don't know what our actual page is, but you can just look us up, the Orange Box Podcast. We're on Facebook as well now. Not really much anything to say about that, because we're here talking about, doing the podcast right now. But then also you can find me both on Facebook and on YouTube. for my cooking channel. Actually, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. X, whatever you want to call it. Not authentic, but delicious. That's on Twitter and YouTube. It's at NABD Cooking. The last recipe I put out was a Philly cheesesteak pizza, which came out great. And next week, I'm either going to do my taco pizza, or if I have time to film it this weekend, I might do jerk chicken tacos. But I'm not sure if I'm going to have time to film that, unfortunately, or if I can film it and still have time to put the video together. It's kind of up in the air right now, but more likely than not, it's just going to end up being my taco pizza. So it's good stuff. Yeah. So, like I said, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, or X. All right, last chance. Anything else you got to say before we finish?
No, oh wait, actually, one thing I did forget. So Saturday, or as of the when this video goes out, tomorrow I should say, I do have a live stream for the essentially 10-year mark of my YouTube channel. That's going to be around 1 p.m. Eastern time, and just time to I'll be playing some games, probably watching a couple of my older videos, and then just also tossing a few game codes in the chat. So should be interesting.
Very cool. I'll try to remember to do that. If you shoot me a message on Discord, then that should remind me. I don't think I have anything that I have to do on Saturday, so I should be able to stop in, but I don't know for sure. We'll see. You know, kids and family and all that, so okay. All right. Well, until next time, I am the Frozen Gamer 87. That is I Am Zerocon. We are the Orange Box Podcast. And make sure, if you are going to try to come up with an outro, that you write it down before you do it. Or at least remember what it was you were going to say, because I've already forgotten. So yeah. Orange Box Podcast, out.